turn this recording on so we can get a nice little VOD going as well, which is always extremely helpful. And alright, so welcome. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Yoda, what's up? Let me get some final shoutouts. Ken's, hey, welcome. Emperor, what's up? Welcome. Stixie, what's up? Welcome. Doc, what up? So, again, this show this week is going to be hopefully a little bit more... oh, fantastic. So they just opened up the voice channel chat. Sweet. Alright. Hearts. Got to get some hearts out there. Cool. So, voice channel chat's open now, so again, we can kind of have some text discussion, and any comments can be provided there, which is always nice. Now, again, this week, we're going to be discussing and talking about the current state of affairs in Infinity Kingdom. So some of those things that we're going to be talking about that we did touch on, and let me do this just so I can post our kind of I would say semi-ish outline that we're going to go off of. But give me a moment. I'm going to post this in the voice channel chat just in case anyone is curious on what that is going to be for this week. And okay, awesome. I just posted it there. So again, right, the big thing to kind of initially start discussing is that, right, when did the game come out, right? So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about big and small changes that we've seen so far. We're also going to touch on the last two IK Studio updates that we've got in mails. We're going to talk about the most recent Facebook post on future content. And then we're also going to discuss some other big things that are coming out as well. There's 3 big things that are kind of in the pipeline outside of those. And then I also kind of want to pose a question to you all, the community, which is, again, some of kind of the top requests we've been getting and we've just been seeing as a community for additions, new features, changes in Infinity Kingdom. Again, we'll talk about kind of how IK has been evolving, and then we'll just kind of open the floor up for any general feedback, any questions. This will kind of be a little bit of that. So again, I think it's always really important for us to be able to hear from the community, which is yourselves, and what people really think, one, about where the game is, like we've talked about kind of where it's going, and then the potential that we hope the game still has for, of course, why we're most likely all still playing. So the first thing is, let me give just a little bit of a brief history lesson, which I'll try and keep this as short as I can. So the game was released on January 28th of 2021. They were still doing beta, even prior to this. I want to say for almost a year. It was about 10 or 11 months that they were doing beta prior to that. Now, I ended up joining and playing in Server 4, I want to say about a week after it was released. Now, keep in mind, the first 8 servers are considered beta servers, right? The game officially released at Server 9, which was one global release, and then also considerably the global release server. Now, since that time, there has been quite a few changes, right? A lot of people probably don't know that, back in beta, they were actually giving you a lot more gold than they do now. During beta, they actually gave you, I think it was up to 9k gold, which is what max level was for gold buildings for any of the capitals, once you got it to level 10. And then, in addition to this, the capital buildings actually gave you building speed and research speed buffs as well. And then there was some other minor differences, like, for example, they didn't have the whole governor thing where when you capture a city now, you can give a title out to someone for like an additional boost. I actually thought that was a really good addition to the game, but it was something before that they didn't have. And those were some of the big things. The last big thing is the way they changed alliance level. So some people may not know that once upon a time, you could actually sit there and max level out Big Family for your alliance tech, which I thought was really interesting. So you could essentially go and just do back-to-back Big Family, right? You could get Big Family all the way to level 10 and get your max 150 member capacity in your alliance ASAP, essentially. Then they changed it. I want to say this was on 1.2. It was either 1.1 or 1.2. They changed this where now how it works, as most of us are now familiar with, it goes off of your alliance level, right? So if your alliance level is 4, then you can only upgrade any tech to 4, right, until you hit alliance level 5, right, and then so on and so forth. So these are some changes, some big changes that they have done, along with, for example, adding a Chronicle timeline. Chronicle never used to have an actual hard deadline timer on it before. You could actually advance Chronicle at your own pace as soon as you cleared objectives. So what ended up happening, which is the reason why they added the timer, is because some servers early on, especially during beta, were just finishing Chronicles extremely fast. And so they ended up adding these elements to kind of slow the pace of the kingdom's timeline development down a little bit, so that way players would have a little bit more longevity in the server before they kind of complete Chronicle 21. Same thing, I think, with just generally lowering gold, right? Again, Contention of Relics was an event that obviously they still have, but they even changed the way that COR worked, right? Before, they would give you, God, it was like 400 to 500 special tiles that were spawning once that 3-day participation period or stage ended in COR within the middle of the map in the Forbidden Zone. So you were getting just a ton of gold at one point in time. But now they changed that to where it's based on overall participation. Now, the one thing I'll say there is that I really hope that eventually, I talked about this in my Feedback Round 3 video that I did on my channel, is I would love for them to really define what those parameters are, right? Be specific and let us know what goes into that, right? Is it obviously it's off of a per player participation basis, but does that player have to participate in every aspect of COR? Do they have to do one contract? Do they have to do 5 contracts? Do they have to attack one player in the FZ? Do they have to gather from one node or attack one chaos or rally one chaos beast? Or do they have to do more than that? Right? What's the minimum threshold to consider a player a contributor in COR to where then that relates to one special tile? And then also, is the ratio 1-to-1? Is it one special tile per each one player that participates in COR? Right, whatever that minimum threshold is, right? Those are the types of minute details that I would love for them to explain and to expand on, because I think that's something the community will really appreciate. So yeah, I think those probably cover some of the really, really big changes that we've seen, so far. Again, I'm sure there's other kind of medium to small scale ones, but at least for me, those have been somewhat of the biggest right now. Ember asked, or is it how many players are currently sitting in the... So the wording in COR goes off of participation. That's the way it reads when you're going into... So like if you were to click on... I'll give you an example. So if we were to click on Contention of Relics, and you look at... where is it here? Contention, speed ups... Oh, hang on. I have to go to rules. I think that's where it is. Yeah. So if you go to rules, and then you click on rewards, you'll see, where is it here? Where it says it. I think I was looking for this before on where it said it here, but if you go to Contention Relics and Rules, there's a line here where it says your participation is, each player's participation is based off how many special tiles will spawn. And I think it's also in the patch notes for a previous patch. They did. You know what? I think it's actually there. Let's look at that. It's either in 1.3. Let me do that. It's either going to be in 1.3 or 1.2. Let me do a quick keyword search. Contention. Here we go. You know what? Hang on. Let me type in special. It's not special tiles. Let me type in Contention King's Message Board. Let's see if there's something else here. Because you're really making me dig for this now. I'm actually going to have to do... And there's personal contracts. Okay, hang on. Let me do 1.2. Let me see if it's in 1.2. Okay, let's see. Commemorate. Let me see. Contracts are now going to be forbidden. I mean, oh my god, maybe it's 1.1. Maybe I'm like really hard tripping right now. 1 second. I'm gonna find this. You are making me dig for this so hard. Let me see. Max power reach 2 mil. Huh. Interesting. Wow, I'm gonna have to. Man, I'm like really gonna need to find where this is now. Oh, my bad. Hang on. Arcane. That's that. There we go. I think that's it. That's why I was typing in the wrong thing. Okay, there's nothing for Arcane. For Arcane. Wow. Let's see. Territory decorations. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to find out where this is then, unless someone already posted in voice channel and I'm just cray right now. What is he doing? How many players are currently sitting? Yeah, I mean, you know, so again, it could be. I'm just trying to look for this line item in Contention of Relics where it specifically says that it's based on now participation for the special tiles that'll actually spawn in the middle. Maybe it's in rules. Let me see. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to look for it a little bit more because I specifically remember reading a line for the COR update, or maybe it was a mod that said it, which it now essentially just being based on the amount of players' contributions and participation in the event that determines how many arcane treasures or special tiles will spawn in the Forbidden Zone once that 3-day participation period ends. That's pretty much how I've always known it as of now. But anyways, if I can't find it, that's okay. We will move on. I feel like I'm spending too much time doing some Sherlock Holmes and Watson investigation on this. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move on because that'll probably end up being better overall as well. Speed ups. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll move on to the next topic. So the next topic that we're going to talk about is going to be, so again, we kind of touched on big and small changes. We talked about, well, I guess more so big changes. We'll touch a little bit on kind of small and medium-sized changes. Again, after kind of talking about when the game was released and talking about where it's been from there. And then, actually, you know what, this is what we'll do. We'll talk about the 2 IK Studio hints, and then I want to talk about the Facebook post, and we'll kind of incorporate some small changes into that as well. So let's look at the most recent 2 IK Studios, which I think this is all system mail related. Okay, here's the Q&A that was 4 days ago. Let's talk about the one that they did a little before that. Okay, so they did one 21 days ago, so about 3 weeks. So we're going to touch on this one first. Now, for those of you guys who've seen my video where I covered both of the IK Studio updates, I think there's a lot of good pieces of information here. And then we're also going to talk about that Facebook post as well. That kind of go into some of the new content that we're most likely going to be seeing out of Infinity Kingdom, along with some others. Yeah, Yoda, if you find it, let me know, or if anyone does. That way, I can potentially quote it correctly. So yeah, I mean, I looked at patch notes 1.1 through 1.3. I don't know if it's in 1.4 because I really remember reading that pretty vividly. But anyways, if someone finds it, let me know. Otherwise, let's take a look at the IK Studio Q&A. So again, if you're loaded in game, you're more than welcome to follow along. Otherwise, I'm really just going to kind of point out some of the big pieces here, which is that, one, they hinted at the Holy Dragon being released, right? So we talked about that, where the Holy Dragon has been now touted, that it is eventually going to be coming out. So there's a good chance we'll probably see that maybe in the next, who knows? It could be as early as the next update. I think more realistically it'll probably be in the second to third update from now, where we'll probably see the Holy Dragon released, or at least get another big update on an actual timeline. So I think that's big, that they're going to introduce that. The other thing that I really liked about the second to last IK Studio Q&A is that they're now going to be incorporating the Wind Dragon, most likely, into chests that you can get on the map, right? So maybe they'll add a fifth gnome boss, very similar to how you can do it with all the other 4 primary elements that you can now use. Which I think is great, because I think Wind arguably could now become a little bit more of a viable option for free-to-play, just because you don't have to spend your premium currency in-game, or, again, your arena tokens more specifically, on actual dragon shards, on Wind Dragon crystals, to upgrade your dragon skills. So the other idea, right, is that, right, they talked about making the claim all button for gifts, right? This was something that people had asked about, and then they ended up adding that in, right? So I think really good when you look at some of the things, and we even made, I don't know if anyone here did watch my round 3 feedback and suggestions video, but one of the things that we did touch on was we talked about the current list of features that they've added in based on community feedback and suggestions that have been provided. And let's see here if we have... Okay, yeah, here it is. So here's our round 3. Let me see here. This will come up for me. Just so I can talk a little bit about what some of those are. Okay, great. So here's a doc that we put out, right? And I'll post this as well if anyone wants to view it just for future reference, because this is something that we did for our round 3 feedback and suggestions. And I'm going to post this in the voice channel chat. Excuse me. So if you look at this, right, this is something that we put out just last month, at the end of last month. And it specifically is a, again, it's a feedback and round 3 suggestion doc. And so this is what I talked about. So this has been sent to the IK team. So every time we do, or more specifically, I should say, every time I do one of these big community feedback rounds, right, we collect all the feedback. Typically there's a channel on my Discord server, and we'll collect all the feedback, and then I'll put it together in like just a nice to read outlined Word doc, and then I'll also make a video on it covering pretty much all of the pieces. And then the items that you see in red are more of what I was referring to as kind of the more highly sought after or requested ones that we saw more frequently, along with some of my personal recommendations. And then if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see there's a tab there that says added/implemented. Right? Now, these are things that we've talked about before, as far as ideas, features, suggestions, before IK ever mentioned any of these things being added in the game. And some of the things you can see, like Battle of Asteria, Infernal Assault, these were multiple community member pieces of feedback where people were just asking for more gold, whether that could happen in some kind of an event. Battle of Asteria is more of kind of a, actually, I mean, really both of them, but Infernal Assault is kind of more of a gnome. Like, one of the things I recommended in the round 2 feedback was doing something like a gnome fortress or a gnome stronghold event. And so they worked, and again, not to say that they added it because of that suggestion, but it's just pointing this out that multiple people recommended these types of features and ideas, and it's nice to see them adding it. Yeah, and Ben Parle's like, yeah, Karok Ceremony. No, exactly. And Karok Ceremony is kind of what Battle of Asteria is, right, if you're comparing it from another game. But these were suggestions that we added in. And regardless if it's from another game or not, it's still more content, right? You can't be mad at more content. And it is good content as far as giving you more opportunities to, one, participate in more events, and then also, I mean, really, when you just look at Infernal Assault, right, I mean, it's a great event for getting a lot of gold. And if you work your way up high enough, right, then, again, I don't really think you can I don't really think you can add in. Yeah, Ember Guard. That's not it. That's for king. That's for rewards from the king. You would want to look for some kind of a line item that talks about how the arcane treasure is populated, or how many of the arcane treasure is populated now in the Forbidden Zone after the participation stage is done. But then you look at things like the Illusion Battlefield, right? Again, some kind of an AVA thing that players recommended and talked about, even though we already kind of got hints that it was coming out. You had detailed post-match reports, right? This was something that got added in the last update. Why? Because IK made a channel on their Discord, as they usually do, for events. So, for example, anytime a seasonal event comes out, they usually always have a dedicated channel because they're looking for feedback. They have an Illusion Battlefield chat on the Discord as well, where people can talk about matchups, post reports, have discussions, and they can also give feedback. One of the most highly requested pieces of feedback from that chat is more detailed post-match reports, right? And they even took it a step further. Now you even see them coming out with, from the last 1.4 patch notes, now they're even going to come out with an eventual spectator option to view matches in real time. And then I think they're also going to be coming out with, oh god, what was it? Oh, a league. That's the other big thing that they mentioned, is that they're going to come out with some kind of an AVA or an Illusion Battlefield league, right? Some kind of a tournament style system. So that's something really cool to be looking forward to, right, in the future. Things that they've talked about that, again, are really big, right? And obviously they're still making fine-tunements, right? In 1.4 they already made right, a couple adjustments and fixes to how Illusion Battlefield works. So one, they care about the feedback enough to listen to it. And then in addition to that, right, they recognize that there's obviously gradual improvements that can be made in the game mode, right? It's never going to be perfect on its vanilla or its introduction, right? I think that can almost be universally said across for a lot of, thank you, sweetie, for a lot of games. And just anytime they're introducing a new big feature, okay, or a new big mode, is that, they, again, right, they're always, I think that's just a good realistic expectation to come in with, right, is that if you play any kind of a Kingdom Builder, or even other games, for example, right, the assumption should never be, this feature needs to be 100% ironed out, it needs to be perfected to where there's absolutely nothing I can say about it, right, the moment it's released, right. I think a more healthy approach is, this is, a good piece of content if it is, and there might still need to be some tweaks or some minor fixes, right, in future updates, but it's eventually going to get there. And I think that's the same thing with like the arena bug, right? I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about that, and they finally addressed that, right, in one of the previous IK Studio Q&As, where they recognize that people have talked about it, right, where some of the victories and losses don't show up appropriately. Even though it doesn't happen every single time, it happens enough to where it's something that definitely warrants a fix, right? That's something they addressed. So I think those are really good things for what we're seeing out of a game this early, at least in my opinion. And again, that doesn't cover every single thing. It doesn't cover every single potential concern, right, or potential bug, no matter how much the size is. But for the most part, I think they've done a really good job of ironing things out and addressing the things that need to be addressed, as far as, one, whether it be acknowledging them or actually just already going in and implementing a fix. Okay, let's see. So we're still doing a few more here on the set. This is the second to last IK Studio Q&A. I think there was one more good thing here that I wanted to touch on. Okay, so the thing was rallies. So I know a lot of people have talked about rallies and kind of how those work, and you've had a good amount of people that have mentioned about the idea of adding stacked rallies, right, or typical rallies that you would see in other games where you're basically front-loading the rally lead, and then basically their total troop number is just being boosted. Right, so they can have, instead of having an attack of, 100k march, right, they could have a couple people join them, and then now their 100k march could be a 250k march, right, using their march lineup or their immortal lineup. And the way it currently works is where it's more of like a machine gun spread, where it goes back to back one by one. So if you have 5 people join the rally, then each person hits that player individually one by one, right? It doesn't stack onto the lead or the person who started the rally. And, it's interesting because, my opinion at one point on this was was pretty lopsided, where I really just felt so strongly about them at least adding that feature, right? Making an additional, and I actually think that it could still be a really good way that differentiates IK from other kingdom builders in the genre, right? A lot of other, I should say, some other kingdom builders I've played, they only have one way that you can rally. Imagine if you had two options on a different type of rally that you could do. So, again, I think, in my opinion, I think that is somewhat revolutionary to the kingdom builder genre and the way that rally mechanics work, because, again, usually it's just more of a stacking way. So I like how they've added this in where you'll have one person hit one by one, and then you could also add in a second type of a rally, which is more of like your shotgun style rally, where you have everyone load in and boost the rally lead, so that way you can potentially combat bigger players as well, right? If you have a rogue whale or two, or if you're doing it in SVS, to have just a better deterrent against bigger players. And keep in mind, the same thing can be done on their end as well, right? You could have whale players can be boosted. In addition to that, whale players can hit harder as well. So, like I said, I think there's two sides to it. Would I still like to possibly see them add something in like that's more of a shotgun style system? Sure. On the other side of it, though, and this is just more of the devil's advocate, is that the way that the current system works is not really that bad. And that's because of a few things. One, because of the fact that they have a training grounds, which limits the amount of overall troops players can have, right? This is, in my opinion, a godsend. And forgive me for saying this, but if you look at other games that do not limit how many troops you can have, right, that is really, in my opinion, going to be a detriment to those games and their overall development, because it's really just going to cause more, concerns and overall deficits in what the overall health of the community is going to evolve into, right? Like a good example, if you took a game like Rock, and they came out with a new update and they said, look, we're gonna cap everyone's troops off, no more unlimited troops. I mean, man, they could arguably go bankrupt, right? Just if you just consider all the people, and for any game, right, that has uncapped troops, right? Think about how many potential spenders would leave that game if they decided to go with a capped model, right? There's all. I mean, again, not to say that would probably happen, but yeah, and I think, and that's probably a good point as well, Bambaro. So again, I think the idea of going with a capped troop model is really the future, right? I really think that is the way to go, no matter what. And because of that, it does offer some soft caps and limitations on what big spenders can do, right? You can't train an unlimited amount of troops, so your money investment goes in other areas. What this means is that free-to-play can keep up a little bit more with people who are spending as far as amount of troops. Now, yeah, they might not necessarily be able to heal as much or retrain as much, but as far as the idea of me being able to go in with a max training grounds versus someone else with a max training grounds, that is where the equal battlefield, or excuse me, the equal ratio comes into, or equal playing field, I should say, as I'm struggling to find the word. So I think that is really important to look at. In addition to that, the other thing I like about how the current rally mechanic works is that even if you're a little bit underpowered from a bigger player that you're attacking, let's say you're 5 or 10k under their troop power, you could still do a rally with players that are within 5 to 10k troop power of that player, and right, if not maybe closer. But even if you're weaker, you can still do damage. You can still send troops to the hospital. You can still have them incur dead. And if you do that a couple times, you'll eventually get them to a point where their troop power is lowering because they have more people that are going to the hospital or more dead troops, which is lowering their overall garrison power, which then allows for you to start getting more victories. So you can do it, but there is a margin of error, right? Obviously, if you have a 50k troop power difference, it's probably not going to go that well. But if you are closer to their troop power, right, then you still have opportunities. And I think the other thing is that, again, I don't know for anyone here who's kind of followed what we've done in, how what played out for our project in S36, but I think it's a great example if you're looking at how you can deal with whales, and then also how you can address and handle rogue alliances. And we showed a little bit of this off at S8. S8 was probably a more ideal situation because in that server we basically got wind that there was an alliance, because there was players that were in that alliance that were sending us screenshots of them saying, yeah, we're going to go rogue, we're going to attack anyone and everyone, and they just said, yeah, but we're just going to bide our time for now. We're not going to do anything. We'll wait until we get like T3 or T4 troops. And the moment that we got word of that, right, we had our 5 or 6 alliances that pretty much, like, I made a whole video about it, which I thought was a really good example of kind of what can happen. Let me see if I still have it here, just to show. Oh, okay, I think I do. So I think this is back in February, and okay, yeah. So here I'll post this in voice channel chat just in case anyone's curious on this portion of the show. So let me see here. Rogue. I think I have to type in rogue to find it. Okay, here it is. So I think this is the video where we talked about some of the situations. Okay, cool. Yeah, so here's 2 videos I'm going to post in voice channel chat. So the first one is from our jump project on S8. The second one is from S36. But there's 2 similar points here for anyone that is curious. Like, let's say you're someone who has a rogue player on your server. Let's say you have a rogue alliance on your server, right? But you're a part of the majority, or you're a part of more of the unified group within your server. All right, these are 2 great videos to look at tips and kind of tricks and just good practices on how you can still be efficient against bigger players than yourselves. And I think that really ties back into the main part here, which is that which is again kind of goes back into the rally system, right? Sure, would I love to see them add something in like that? I do. But I do think it has its own pros and cons by adding in that type of a rally system. The biggest reason why is because eventually you're going to get to a point where, right, you are getting to a higher level troop power. Because keep in mind, troop power has a hard cap. I don't know if it's around 240k, 245, wherever it is, but it's somewhere up there between like that too. Because again, we've seen people right at 237k troop power, and I want to say they're near kind of max cap. So you're probably looking at something around 240k, give or take a little bit, and that's pretty much the hard cap right now for the highest troop power that someone can get to. Now, in addition, right, keep in mind, artifacts now, with them adding that'll probably boost that a little bit. But eventually, players will start getting to that higher tier of cap. Now, yeah, sure, free-to-play is going to take longer, of course, as it usually does in any game. That's pretty standard. But there is a hard cap, right, as far as power that you can get to. So eventually, right, it will start to even more out. And again, that's not to take away from the idea of them adding in some kind of a more shotgun-style kind of rally stacking mechanic. I still like the idea of doing it, but I do think that it's something that if it's added, it has to be watched with pros and cons, right? Because it could also be used, right? Keep in mind, even though you as a player may enjoy the idea of being able to now have a tool available to you where you can be a little bit more fighter, you might have more PvP capabilities against bigger / whale players, they will also have those same advantages against you, right? Which means if they hit you with a 400 to 500k rally, that's going to do more damage to you as a player, right? Just for yourself, right? In addition to you being able to damage them as well, right? So again, it works both ways, right? That's why it's really good to always kind of ask those questions on how would it work for like the players that people are asking for the system to be added for, and then in addition, right, how would it also work on you, right, as the free to play or the low spend player, right? Because again, there's 2 sides to each. And yeah, sure, you could also use it on structures, right, especially if they add those in for If they add those things in for like for AVAs, if you're doing rallies on those, or even for SVSs, right? So again, there's still other uses for that type of a rally mechanic, but just keep in mind that it works both ways. Oh man, good stuff. Let me see here and go back. I'm sure there's probably some hand raises. Again, guys, for anyone who does have a question, again, if you are someone who's just a visitor or if you're new to Discord and you're tuning into the show, you're more than welcome to ask your question in our Discord server in the voice channel chat. Otherwise, again, if you're a current member, you're more than welcome to ask a question, and we're happy to call on you. Okay, so I think that kind of sums up. Let me see here if I'm missing anything else from that second IK Studio update. If not, we will move on to the most recent. Okay, yeah, I think they were talking about adding more shards for the harbor, because I think some people had felt that they should be getting. So I do kind of agree with this as well, as far as the, maybe getting a little bit more purple crystals or soul crystals from the harbor from doing the 12 hours, or maybe just a little bit of a boost to each of the times. I don't know how much it would need to be. I don't think it needs to be a enormous amount, but even if it was just a little bit, I think I would probably be okay with that as well. And then, let me see, the last thing they had, this was from number 10. They did say they're going to be introducing more future cross-server events and other new exciting content. And then you have the most recent IK Studio Q&A, which I think was about a week ago. Let's see here when they put this one out. This is about 4 days ago. But real quick, again, I'd love to kind of pose the question to anyone here as well, right? At least from what we talked about in the last IK Studio Q&A, some of those other pieces. Does anyone have any questions on any of that I've talked about or covered? Or even just any kind of concerns? I think someone asked something here. Django Fett asked, let me see, do you not think that if they are going to do something like that, you have to allow more defenders to defend as well, because it would give people too much of an advantage? Yeah, Django, so I mean, what I would say is I think it's a little bit... Oh, Chaos, what's up? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of the same like I just talked about. Right? I think there's pros and cons to adding in that type of a rally mechanic. And I actually think that the way the current rally system works, right, you could make the argument that, maybe it's less punishing, or maybe more punishing. It just depends on, how they would work in a kind of rally stacking mechanic, right? Would they do it at a face value, where if you have, let's say you have 5 people and they all have T4 troops, would you just add on their total troop power or their total troops to the primary lead, and that would just boost his power at a flat rate? Would you, have a decrease where, you have like a negative 10% troop power or total troops that would join in from any additional person that joins the rally, right? So even though you're adding more total power and total troops onto the rally, right, you're putting a little bit of a handicap, right? So maybe it doesn't get too out of control. I mean, again, some of those things we just don't know. As far as, again, how they would potentially work that in. I do think it's something that could be considered, of course, but again, but I do think it's something that would have to be monitored. We have to see kind of how it would develop. Instead of number of players. Yeah, I mean, you could do that too, Ben Bar. That's a good point, right? You could add a garrison cap and a rally cap, right? So it doesn't get too out of control. And then that way, you're probably, in that case, you would probably focus a little bit more on the quality of players, right? So you probably would be looking at players that, right, if you're doing specific rallies. But this is the other thing you have to factor in, right, is let's say you have someone who has T2 troops or someone who has T3 troops and T4 troops. Let's say you have a mix of tier troops that are added in. You would still have to try to come up with some kind of a system that would kind of scale off the troops that are being added, right? So you could say something like, if you're doing T2 troops, or for example, like if you do T5, T4 would maybe have like a negative 10% power decrease, or maybe a negative 10% total troop decrease, right? So it's not added, or maybe they would just scale a part of it would just have to really see how they would go off it, right? If they do a flat ad rate, then maybe for lower tier troops they either lower the power or they lower the amount of troops that are going in to the rally, so it scales appropriately based on factoring for like the highest tier that you could do. That would obviously have to be something they would have to figure out, and I don't think it would be too difficult. But yeah, I think doing something like a cap on what your garrison or your rallies could be could really be a good idea, because it kind of already goes along with them having a cap on the amount of troops you could train from training grounds as well. So no, good points. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to take a look now at the second to last IK Studio, or the most recent IK Studio Q&A. This was posted 4 days ago. And then we're going to talk about the Facebook post that also mentioned some other new content. That's going to be coming up as well. And then we'll kind of round it out and just do a, quick overview of, where we think the kind of state of affairs, where I think the kind of state of affairs is and where the game's going. And then I also, like I said, want to open the floor up at the end to where I can kind of answer any questions. If you're someone who has a concern, if you think something is messed up about the game, right, I definitely want to hear that, so it's something we can talk about and kind of address. Okay, now, so again, this is the most recent IK Studio Q&A. If you're loaded in-game, you would just load up your mail, go to System, and then just scroll down, and you'll see where the subject line for the mail says IK Studio Q&A, if you want to follow along. So the first thing is, right, they talked about adding playback function in one of the next updates, right? So they said if Illusion Battlefield can replay, that was a question. And then they're also adding a report feature for resource sellers and any kind of spammers that are posting in-game messages. Some of those they've already put in as well from the last update, but it looks like they're talking about doing a little bit more for the resource sellers. I also noticed that, from the point number 4, they also talked about adding in Arabic language, right? So again, I always think it's pretty cool when they add in additional language translators, or excuse me, I guess base native language for the localizers that they use there in the regions, because it just opens the game up for more players across the world as well to play, right? Which is only a good thing for just hopefully boosting more traffic. So then, let me see, I think there was one more thing they added here. Yeah, so they talked about in the last IK Studio Q&A, right, that they're going to add in some kind of an AVA or an Illusion Battlefield ranking system. And they're also going to be doing a Illusion Battlefield tournament system as well. And they also mentioned the spectator system, right? So again, really cool things that we're seeing coming out. And so I think these are really good indicators, right, of content coming forward. Now, it's funny because I remember, I have this conversation with my buddy Shadow all the time, which is that, they were talking a lot about how, it seems like new content is coming out slowly, or, there's nothing to do right now, right? And usually you hear these things more often than not from people who are spending money, right? Most of the time, it usually comes from people that are spending a good amount of money. One, because they're progressing their accounts faster than others are, and they're probably already getting to some of that mid to late game content faster than others are. And then you also will hear this from players who have been in servers for a long time, right? Because for the most part, after the preset events that they have, right, it's really COR, right, that you're getting on a consistent kind of 2-week basis. But the challenge that I would kind of give to players is that, to be honest, this is all pretty standard, right? Even when I've played other Kingdom Builders, right? It's not like they have 200 plus events that they rotate every week or every 2 weeks, right? Again, I think this is kind of where we have to apply a little bit of that realistic expectation, which is that even in other games, right, they might rotate 20 to 30 events, right, give or take, in maybe a month's period or across a month and a half, 2 month time frame, right? This is pretty standard. And even for the amount of events that are out right now in IK, I mean, I still think it's fine. The fact that they've just added in 2 new events with Infernal Assault and Battle of Asteria, right, I think are good additions, good additional pieces of content. And, again, I think they're just going to keep adding more, right? I think the thing to keep in mind, right, it's the turtle won the race, not the rabbit, right? And if they just come out with all these pieces of content and they don't give you any sense of suspense, right, or yearning for content, right, then that can also lose its appeal, right? So I'm a big believer in it, kind of everything in moderation in some areas, and I'm a big believer of that when it comes to how you're introducing new pieces of content, right? If they just come out and they release content that they've had planned a year out and they release it all in 1 month, then where's the rest of your new content, right? And the argument shouldn't then be, well, oh, they're a development company, they should just develop more content. I mean, it takes time to do those things, right? Again, I would never take it upon myself to assume what developers do, what they go through, the amount of time it takes to put in new pieces of content or to design new events and then actually test those things and, filter them out for bugs and then release that content, right, publicly. My only assumption is that probably takes more time than whatever I personally think it would. And again, I think that's where it comes in as a community to have those hopeful senses of realistic expectations when new content is being introduced. So I think the pace that they're going so far, I mean, again, they're consistently putting out good quality updates, right? I could make the argument that the last 3 to 4 updates have probably been the best updates that we've got so far in the game when it comes to new content and then, right, consistent adjustments, fixes, right? We see, and the other thing that I really love is that, and I don't know how anyone else feels about this, I would love to hear what any of you do, is I really love how they have not been doing extreme balance changes to Immortals. Right? That's something that I really love on such a big scale I cannot tell you. Right? I've played a lot, like, let me just give an example from, like, League of Legends is a prime example of this, right? You could make the argument that the meta for League of Legends, right, almost changes to an extent, whether it's a small or a large amount, based on the new updates, right? The new patch notes that come out, right? At least for the time I played, right? And again, I'm sure this could be said about other games as well, but just using this as an example, right? Almost every time I remember reading patch notes, it was like 10 to 20 champions that would have balance adjustments. And so I love the fact that IK has been doing very minimalistic or minimal balance changes in very small amounts or only for like 1 or 2 Immortals here and there, if not any balance changes at all. Right? Because I still think that the game is so young to where we really haven't seen kind of meta comps, really for the most part yet. Right? And again, I think we'll start seeing some of those when the global, and this is another one of those big updates that they've already talked about, which is introducing server-wide arena. Right? This is amazing. Even other games that I've played in the Kingdom Builder genre don't have this feature in them. And I think some do. But I love the idea that they're introducing a game-wide arena system because I really think this is going to do a lot of awesome things. I first off think that this is going to allow for us to see more of those, because keep in mind, when you do arena, unlike when you're doing Well of Time, arena is a more accurate indicator outside of also factoring your walls and fortifications. Arena is more of an accurate PvP indicator. So arena, especially when the global arena comes out, which there's a good chance it could come out before SVS comes out, just because arena is already, like, the actual system is already in play. So the hope is that maybe they don't have to do as much fine tuning. But if it does come out before SVS, the global wide arena is probably going to be more of your meta indication on what kind of meta comps are doing really well, right, against others. And maybe if they allow for us to maybe watch replays from matches, that would be cool as well. Right? If they allow for you to watch replays or even just look at match report stats from the server-wide arena, right, as a regular player, even if you didn't play in that match, that would be awesome. I mean, there's so much data you could pull from that would really give you a good indication on what some of those meta comps are kind of going into SVS. So, anyways, I just think it's awesome that they're working on that type of a feature, and I think there's a lot of potential in what that can do for the game. Now, if you want to take it a step further than that, right, what I think could be really cool, and we've talked about this a little bit, so there's this game called Marvel Strike Force that my buddy Shadow told me about. And one of the features they have in this game is a real-time battling system. And there's actually another game I've seen this in called Brave Conquest, which is now kind of a deflated game, but it was made by IGG. And basically what they allow for you to do is take Arena, but just imagine you being able to manually control your immortals, right? You could manually time out the skills when you use them for your immortals, along with timing out the dragon skills. Now, if they eventually added in some kind of a real-time, manually controlling Arena system or mode within Arena, that could be the next level thing that takes IK just over the top. I think over the top, and probably any other. I don't know if there's even another Kingdom Builder that does real time, some kind of a PvP arena style system where they allow for you to actually manually control skill activations for your characters, along with, in IK's case, skill activation as well for your immortals, or for your dragons, excuse me. But that would be something that I think would just be a dope feature that could really, again, just like skyrocket IK above and beyond the others. Whew, man, so passionate when you're talking about this stuff. So serious. Sometimes we are. Okay, so let me touch on now. I think that might have been the last thing that we talked about for the recent. Let me see if there was anything else we missed from that last IK Studio Q&A. I know, right? It could be really awesome, Yoda. I think so. Let's see if I'm. Let me just make sure. Add helps to hospital. Yeah, that's been another thing that people have talked about. I actually wouldn't mind seeing that added in as well. Hospital helps. I'm in pain. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about before we kind of just do a general open floor is we're going to talk about the latest Facebook post. So there was a recent Facebook post that talked about I think it was before 69 too. Let me see where they posted this. Okay, so it's the mid-year reflection, right? So they posted this on June 30th, and if anyone's curious, let me see if I can, for later, I think it posts up here. Okay, let me see if I could send you know what, I'll just post a screenshot. Actually, you know what, hang on, let me see if I can do this here. Okay, yeah, I can. Cool. I think it's loading. Okay. So I'll post this in voice channel chat. But this is so that link will take you to the mid-year reflection, where they also give us some new pieces of update or future content. Okay. So some of the things that they talk about in here, right, is their kind of past 6 months of working on the game. Right, talking about Titan Tulas, Contentious Relics, Solution Battlefield, right, with many new immortals, right, they kind of give a thanks, special gift, and then they talk about some of the things that are going to be coming, right, they talk about the second half of 2021, right, they have new content planned, they have new levels, more immortals, maps, as well as new cross-server events. IK's biannual celebration will begin in late July, and you can view personal stats, puzzles, wish fruit, right, so it looks like there's going to be some kind of maybe a celebration-style event. But again, these are nice, right? New levels, immortals, maps with new cross-server events, right? Again, I think this hints at the possibility of maybe seeing SVS before the end of the year, or at least some indication, which would be nice. And then also, I think the server-wide, right, or the game-wide arena, right? So I think those are the two big pieces. And again, if there's anything else in the works, that could happen as well. But I think those are at least two that we've already seen hints at and confirmations that they have announced it and they're in development, that we could possibly see in the second half of the year. So again, I think there's a lot to look forward to as far as where IK is right now and then where it's going, right? Albeit, right, the fixes and, any of future updates or modifications that they come out with. I'll help you go great. Yeah. So anyways, guys, that kind of, sums up my brief kind of where the game is at, where it's going. Like I said, I think IK is in a great place, right? I think that for myself, I don't know if there's anyone else here that has came across or came over to IK from another Kingdom Builder. I myself did, and thankfully I'm happy that I haven't been playing that game now for the past, I don't even know, what has it been, 9-10 months now, or so, right? And I'm really happy with the time that I've been spending in IK and kind of where the game is. Now, with that being said, I'd love to kind of open the floor up. Does anyone have any, whether it be a question, whether it be a concern, whether it be something about the game that bothers you, or you want to ask a question about? I would love to hear. Right, if you're someone who has any level of feedback, suggestion, a concern, even if it's a question, right? Please feel free. You can post that in the voice channel chat, or if you're a current existing member and you want to raise your hand to talk about something, feel free. Right, this is kind of like an open floor now for the community, where if there's just anything you want to talk about, you want to touch on, maybe you just want to hear my thoughts on something, please feel free at this point. So. And again, just a friendly reminder, right? If you're a visitor or if you're a new member, you're more than welcome to join the server and ask a question in voice channel chat. We're just only going to be calling on existing members to come on voice if they'd like. And I'll just wait. I'll just take a look at voice channel chat in case anyone does have some questions. I'll give it a minute or two. If not, there are a couple topics that I can pull from general chat to talk about as well. Because I know over the past couple days there's definitely been some conversation there. All right. PM. Oh man. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. He's like, did he disappear? Sorry, I had to go and just take care of a quick little emergency. But no, we're good. Sorry, so I'm still taking a look here at voice channel chat. Let me see. Ward Daddy asked. Oh, sorry, hang on. Oh, some people had some questions. Let me see here. Okay. Yoda had something. All right. And then I think Ward Daddy asked some too, so I'll definitely get to that. Let's go ahead and invite Yoda to see if he wants to ask something. If he's still here. Otherwise, we can recall. And then Ward Daddy, I'll get to your question too as well. Okay, maybe if Yoda wants to come back and let me know. Oh, still okay. Got you. No problem. So Ward Daddy asked, "What is the role for free-to-play players in a whale-controlled server?" That's a good question. I think. So I guess what I would ask is, what kind of a situation are you in your whale-controlled server? Is it to the point where the whale is going around and attacking anyone and everyone? Is it where they're not attacking, but the whale's alliance just controls all of the capitals? Maybe they have the best cities for themselves. I guess what exactly is the situation though? Right? Are they limiting what other alliances can get for cities? Right? How many total cities or how many alliances actually have cities in your server? I think any of those things would be really helpful to know. And also, what server is it? If it's server 44 or older, then I can take a look in it. Otherwise, I'm still making accounts in the newer servers. I just haven't really had a chance to catch up yet. Just because of everything going on with our jumper project and just trying to get some things done on that front. So you said it's stable. Oh man, you know what I need to do? Server 38. Okay. No, I could take a look at server 38. I have an account there. Let me see. Hang on, I gotta scroll down though so I can find my S38 account. One sec. Okay, here it is. Cool. Yeah. Give me a sec. Let me load up here, and let's see how the server 38 looks. Okay. Okay, so okay, so it's AOW then. That is the. Let me see here. What's your faction power split? Well, I mean, faction power split isn't that bad, actually. I don't think I've done a server analysis on this server yet, so. But it's not that bad. It's within 150 points from 1 to 3. Yeah, I mean, good. There's good, decent coverage split on the faction spread. Let's see. Okay, top 4 players are in AOW for troop power. Oh, excuse me. 6 of the top 7 are in AOW for troop power. Oh, wow, okay. So you have 8 of the top 10 that are there. Yeah. So, always, man, always. You already know, man. My goal is to have a level 11 account in every server. I just have not been able to work on it for the past like 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm pretty behind, just because of all the work I've been putting in on the jumper project. Because we're still recruiting and oh god, and then still trying to find time to make content. So it's a lot. If I was making more money from my YouTube endeavors, then yes, I could probably justify to my lady and say, look, hun, or babe, I'm just going to stay home and do this. So then, yeah, I'd probably have more time during the day to get some of that stuff done. So as far as free-to-play goes, I mean, honestly, what I would say right now, as far as kind of what your goal would be, I mean, again, SVS is coming out. We know it's coming out. We know that they're going to do more content for Illusion Battlefield. We know there's probably going to be more content coming out as well. So, I mean, honestly, as a free-to-play, And I think just as a contributing member to an alliance as well, I really think the focus there should just be, pay attention to the calendar every week, right? Try to min-max the events as best you can, while picking and choosing the events you want to kind of well, for lack of better words, right, overuse or overinvest your AP for. We've talked about this a little bit before, but pretty much the best events to really use AP for is double rewards. And then arguably now, you probably could make a strong argument for now Infernal Assault, because it gives you a lot of gold. Right, so I would say at the moment Infernal Assault and probably Double Rewards, I would say, are the two best events to probably use a good amount of your AP for, as far as what you have on reserve. Outside of that, I would just say, right, pay attention to the calendar, try to min-max events, right, participate as much as you can. I would say, be active. Again, and this is more of like a personal thing, right? Not everyone is going to be active in chat. Some people may not even care to talk in chat, but I would say if you're someone who, cares about the health of your alliance and you feel comfortable to talk in chat, to be social, then I think that can be a plus. But I think for the most part, really your focus should just be on progressing your account, right? Trying to level it as high and as fast as you can, because really all you're doing is preparing for SVS, right? Or KVK, right? Depending, again, I don't know if you have experience War Daddy and SVSs or KVKs in other games, but for the most part, and that goes for anyone else that's in the call as well, right? For the most part, that is what players strive for. Right, that is what you look forward to. Right, it's not, and I've had this debate in conversation with others, but right, it's the enjoyment for these games is participating in server versus server, kingdom versus kingdom, for the most part. And the reason why is because in those types of events, you can actually participate and engage with every player in your server. Right, unlike when you're playing an AVA or like an Illusion Battlefield, right, you could only have 40 people participating. But in SVSs and KVKs, if every single player in your server wanted to participate, they could, right? So the opportunity for what you can get up to is there, and that is why those types of events are by far, right, the most important events for a server, and that is what every single player, when you play these types of games, should be striving for, right? And just because it's not released yet, or you can't visually see it, doesn't mean that should stop you from preparing for it, right? That's actually that's probably one of the most unfortunate things and comments that I hear and see from players who just don't have a lot of experience in Kingdom Builders to understand why you want to invest early to get better return on that investment later on, right? Keep in mind, IK is very young. Right, it's not like other games where they've been out for years, right? IK has been out, coming up on, they're 5 months, five and a half months, almost 6 months now, or it'll be 6 months at the end of this month, and right, so with that in mind, is, these are just really good practices, right? As far as what you should really be investing for, right? The things that you do on your home server are more or less pretty irrelevant, right? And again, my background, I come from, I come from, other Kingdom Builders, but one of the Kingdom Builders I come from is, you have more often than not, pretty structured and organized servers, right? Where people going in already kind of have somewhat of a universal understanding on how certain events can be ran, right? There might be some variations to them, but for the most part, many people have some amount of knowledge and experience in how to go about organizing or managing some of these events and what they're building a server for, right? Again, in some of these games, I would never hear someone say, "Oh, well, I'm playing in this server so we could eventually get to the point where we're having all out war, or where we're fighting amongst each other, or where I can just go around and attack everyone." I almost rarely ever heard that, especially in any of the projects I organized or even new servers that came out. Most of what you would always hear people talk about, right, for servers that have these features already in them is, okay, right, what are we going to do to best prepare ourselves for the first SVS or the first KVK that comes up? Right, and that's really what the narrative should be in these types of games, right? Where these features have already been announced that they're coming out, or if they're in. Now, my approach is a little bit different compared to others, because even when the game first started, for what we tried to do in Server 6, for what we tried to do in Server 8, even before they ever announced or gave us any inkling that SVS was something that was in development, right? My approach was always, right, we need to build a server that is ready for SVS, even before it got announced. Why? Because in these types of games, if they are successful, right, like IK is, and it's trending upward in, these games will eventually add. There's such a high chance that it's almost a without a doubt we will see these features added into these types of games, right, to kingdom builders, because this is what healthy, competitive kingdom builders, right, that are successful will eventually add in at some point. And so, again, that for myself at least, right, that's kind of always been my approach, is we need to always build a server towards this. And again, keep in mind, because of how young IK is, you don't really have a lot of servers that have, and I don't even know how many, right, that really kind of have those goals out from day one. Now, maybe those goals can kind of be, I don't want to say like manipulated, but those things can kind of be changed and worked on after you kind of have a group that, more or less kind of establishes its dominance in a server, right? Or if your server has war and then eventually one group kind of comes out on top, which is pretty standard, right? You'll eventually kind of come across that, where you'll see these trends that will happen. And that's the other thing too as well. So anyways, War Daddy, I hope that answers the question without me kind of rambling on too much. But in short, yes, I would say, right, min-maxing events, looking at the calendar, right, preparing yourself for when events are coming up, right, obviously supporting the Alliance socially if you're able to, right, participating in any sieges or Alliance-based events that you can, and then just working on progressing and leveling your account. Up until when SVS comes, or if you're someone who likes to participate in AVA or the Aleutian Battlefield, then that's something for you as well. Yeah, man. I still have a lot to do. Like, literally right when I finish this is back to mass messaging human beings. It's the good stuff. I think I'm good here. I think I am good. Nice. Alright. So I was going to give it a sec to see if anyone else has another question, or maybe is there a hand raised here? Visitor? Okay, no. Again, if you're just joining and you do have a question, we're just this is our open floor Q&A portion, where anyone is more than welcome to leave some feedback. If you have a comment, a concern, a question on kind of where, IK is, maybe something you've been noticing, maybe something you just want to ask, as far as kind of how to get around or deal with something that you might be experiencing, please feel free. You're more than welcome to ask that in the voice channel chat. If you're a current or existing member, you could raise your hand. Can I? Oh, I can't attack that. Nice. Otherwise, I will grab a comment from the Gen Chat to talk about that for a sec, because I know there's a few there from people that have that were talking about things. So one thing I'll talk about while I wait for someone else to my new blimp. Hey, that's pretty dope. So one thing I'll touch on real quick, and this again kind of falls back onto one of the big things I like to talk about a lot, which is just having good realistic expectations when you come into these types of games. One of those being, which is something that there was a little bit of conversation on yesterday, is when you're going into a server as and this applies this does apply for a good amount of people. Is when you go into a server as someone who is as someone who is either going to be like spending money, or if you're going in and you see other players, whether they be jumpers or if they're not, and then they're going into that server and they're powering up pretty quick, or they're getting at higher power than you are, and for whatever reason, right, that can be something. I guess that can be a little bit of a turnoff to some people. Right, what I would say is that all of those things are pretty standard as far as, again, what I would say is for some of the kingdom builders I've played. Now, I don't know if jumpers are in every single popular kingdom builder that exists today, but I will say that for at least some of the big titles I'm familiar with, right, this is a pretty common thing. Now, there are differences, though. Some kingdom builders have time limits on how long you have as a new account / jumper to prep, where they might not give you a lot of time in that regard. And then there's others, for example, like IK, where you can prep for however long you want. You could prep an account for a year if you wanted to, or longer than that, right? You could go in. I mean, I've seen some jumpers for people that have spent money that had a jumper. I've seen 2 jumper accounts at VIP 15 already, and they're at, I think they were at like 270, 285k power, like total power, and they were already at VIP 15. They had like a maxed Earth March, and I think a couple other, I think they had like 1 or 2 other marches that were pretty close to at least max skill. And so again, right, it's wild, but that's what you can do. Now, right, I do think there's pros and cons there. And I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is server health and how you can be in a position to where your individual player experience is good going into a new server. Because one of the big things we always talk about is that, when you go into a new server, it's just a bunch of unknowns, right? You have no idea what you are going to get when you go into a new server, especially if you're a new player and you just don't know anything about the game, right? Let's say you're a brand new player and you're getting attacked because, that server for whatever reason is either lawless, right? Especially when kill event comes up and people are just kind of getting attacked left and right, especially if there's no structure or if there's no system in place or if you don't have any people that are out there protecting players, right? It can turn ugly just depending pretty quick. And, you being randomly attacked can be a turnoff to some people, right? Most new players that are playing Kingdom Builders for their first time, or if they just don't have a lot of experience, are usually learning, right? They're taking time to read, whether that be chats, click and read on events. They're trying to learn and just better understand the game overall. And that's really where you want to give people an opportunity to fall in love with the game. Right, to at least fall for some level of enjoyment, to where they'll stay longer, and because they're staying longer, you now have a better opportunity to educate and to inform players on how trends work, on how events work, and then they'll have more realistic expectations coming in. One of the benefits, though, of applying that same system or applying a different approach to new servers opening up is, right, you go in with a group, right, which is again more notably known as kind of jumping or jumper groups that you would come to find out. And because of this, jumper groups are really there to act as a deterrent, right? It's one of the biggest things I always talk about. Right, you're really getting invested and involved with a jumper group because you want to try and give your group of players and the server that you're going into, right, the best chances for success. Right, you want the server to be healthy, to not have there be any, again, it depends on what your approach is, right? Maybe your group is going in and you're like, look, we just want to take over the top spots. It's just going to be our way or the highway. Or maybe you go in and you're like, okay, we just want to do nothing but cause war, and we don't really care who leaves, right? Because we're still going to be standing at the end of the day. Or maybe you want to go in and you want to have, more on a conservative side, where maybe you have more of kind of a safe zone approach, and you want to allow players to develop, right? And maybe an extreme conservative way. You don't want there to be any attacking, any PvP, any fighting. Maybe you want there to be some managed and controlled PvP and fighting, right? In more of a development-based server. I mean, there's a couple ways that you can really run and manage a server. Now, out of all of those, right, some of those might be more efficient and effective towards long-term morale and the kind of return on investment that you'll get from doing those when it comes to things like SVS prep and others that you'll see coming up for bigger events, with, again, the main focus there really being SVS. And so again, right, because there's different ways, right, having a big group going in allows for you to have players that can combat rogues, can combat rogue alliances or rogue players or people that just want to do harm, and more importantly, educate. Right, that's the biggest thing in these types of games, is that most people who play Kingdom Builders just don't really understand. Well, not to say that in a bad way. It's just, right, it's like what you don't know, you don't know. Right, is the approach, or is the saying. And so, because most players are just unaware of how kingdom management works, server management, politics, what kind of end game goals are, right? Why would I do all of these things in my server for the first 6 to 8 months preparing for SVS, right? And other games, that's what you would do, right? You would basically spend those first 5 months, right? And you know, one of the games I come from, that's what you would do. You'd get into a new server, and those first 5 months, all you're doing is min-maxing your account, right? You're min-maxing events, you're min-maxing your progression, because you're trying to get your account to the best possible state that you can have it in for when KVK or SVS comes up for your server or kingdom. So you can be a bigger contributor. And that's the thing, it always really gets me, because, and that's what I find somewhat comical, but I also understand why, is when you have players that are spenders or people that just want to do nothing but PvP on their servers, why would you waste your efforts doing it on your home server when you know you're going to be restricted, you know there's going to be people that don't like it, and you know you might be made out to be the bad guy, or you might have people that go against you. Maybe you'll get removed from your alliance, maybe you won't be able to participate in any alliance, right? And that can demoralize you, that can kind of ruin the social aspect or the fun for you in some areas, or maybe it doesn't. But right, and then maybe once King comes out, right, maybe they start giving you negative titles. I mean, there's other restrictions and drawbacks that can happen from that. But if you just change the perspective and the approach, and you look at it from the other end, which is that, let's say the people that really want to PvP on your server don't just do whatever they want, and they work on leveling their accounts so then they can do whatever they want in SVS. Right? In my opinion, that's really where you earn your stars and stripes, right? That's really where you earn and make a name for yourself. If you're someone who really wants to PvP, you don't do it in your home server, right? You do it in SVS for your server. Because in SVS, you could PvP as much as you want, do whatever you want. You can attack any player in an enemy server or kingdom to your heart's content, right? That's really where you make a name for yourself. So that's just why I find it somewhat funny why you have the argument from some players who will say, you know, oh, well, SVS isn't out yet, or I'm bored, or, you know, I just want to go PvP and attack whomever I want. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Players are, of course, completely entitled to play however they want, right? We're not here to tell people how to play. But there are obvious advantages and more pros than there are cons when you approach the game from a way where you really understand mechanics and you understand what the true benefits are by doing certain things at certain times. And just having unnecessary PvP and a warlike mentality in your home server, at least in my opinion, this is not the most efficient and effective way to go, because what happens if you do that and then on the worst case, your server loses activity? And then you're just stuck in pretty much an inactive, deadish server, right? Now, yeah, for someone like that who probably spends money, they can migrate out, but they're going to have to spend however much money to buy the necessary new world bundles, or, right, if their alliance hasn't hit alliance level 9 yet, then now they're forced to spend money if they want to leave to go to an active server. And what happens if they do the same thing, right? Now, sure, the way I look at it, right, is it's like a need versus a want, right? Do you absolutely need to PvP and fight all the time in your home server? No. But do you just want to for some of those players? Sure. And like we've talked about, right? I mean, people can play the game however they want. But in my opinion, if you really want to enjoy the game to the fullest extent of what it actually has to offer, then having a good understanding of some of these events and how you can really enjoy the game to the fullest is good to know. And right, that's something I often hear from people is why are servers turning out this way, or why are these things happening? And right, a big part of it is just understanding trends, understanding server trends, why things happen a certain way, and then taking time to educate. Some people that play Kingdom Builders just that spend a lot of money sometimes don't know that there's a better way, right, or a more efficient way of doing things where they could really fight and do PvP in a more unrestricted way. Because as always, right, if you're doing a lot of PvP on your home server, there are certain types of restrictions that server can place and put into effect, which will limit what some of those rogue players, rogue whales can do, right? Albeit if it's a full alliance or more than that, that's different. But anyways, yeah, I guess that's just my viewpoint, right? I've always been really kind of big on being SVS focused and doing any enjoyable AVAs that you can do as well. But SVS is just SVS, server versus servers and kingdom versus kingdoms have always been, and at least in my eyes, right, one of the most amazing features and game types that I think mobile games have probably ever seen. And more specifically, obviously, for the Kingdom Builder genre itself. But these are just things that I think offer so much enjoyment to every single player that is on a server, or I should say up to every single player that is on a server. And that's really where I think the value comes in, and the engagement, the social aspect of how much fun you can really have, especially for someone that wants to do a lot of PvP, right? Why would you not build your account up, right? Get as many max marches as you can, and then just let loose in PvP and make a name for yourself, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that will do content coverage for SVS, right? You might have other content creators going into those servers and doing coverage, and you might get more shoutouts. You might get your name recognized. I mean, that's something that some people might value more than just terrorizing their server, their home server, so to speak. So I also think it would be nice if the game gave more tools that could limit rogue players, which would help servers to stay healthier. I do like that they've added in some negative titles, but I would love for them to add in, I don't even know, I'd love for them to add in something else. I'd have to really think about it on what else they could add. But I do think there are some other things that they could try to that could limit. And again, I'm sure other games have probably done similar things with some kind of negative titles or skills that you can use on a cooldown period, which, maybe something like, you designate a rogue player where they can't attack any other player for 24 hours or something like that, right? That could be a cool skill to use, right? And something to that effect, right? That would just limit the amount of war or rage they could cause upon players. Exile. I mean, yeah, I don't know about exiling though, because if you exile them from the server, how would that work? Does it random teleport them to another server? Does it, right? I don't know. I don't know if you could go the exile route. I think that could be cool, but I just don't know if you could go the exile route. I think having skills or some kind of king buffs or debuffs that you can use on those types of rogue players is better, because I think it would limit their actions on the server and most likely force them to leave the server sooner or just get with the program. Which could be exile. Hey, there you go. Yeah, that could be cool. There's a button that just says, "Hey, exile to server 5." Yeah, that could be fun. So, but yeah, I think, like I said, I think just giving more support tools in game, and maybe that could be something we try to think of and come up with. What would be some good skills or debuffs or types of titles that could be handed out to rogue players that could help? Yeah. Yeah, or better yet, Bambaro, take that the opposite way. You could do, negative 100% or 100% decrease healing time for 24 hours. And then when the kill events come up, you can use that skill or title on those players, right? So they don't get as much out of those types of events. Or even King of the Hill for the Stage 5 kill event. That could actually be a really cool skill. So yeah, I think examples like that, I'm sure if we racked our heads, I'm sure with the amount of people that have played other Kingdom Builders, and I'm sure have seen other negative titles or skills be implemented to be good resources against rogue players, right, that can be helpful. So, right, or even rogue alliances in those cases as well. But yeah, I think some good ideas there. Yeah, Sono, what's up? Sorry, are you just saying hi? Oh, sorry, maybe you're just saying hi. Thought you might have had a question there for a sec. Oh, look at Ask. Makes his return. He just keeps coming back for more. Yeah. So again, if anyone has like I said, we're kind of just doing a little bit of open floor Q&A right now on kind of the state of the game. If you have a question and you're a current member of the server, you're more than welcome to ask or raise your hand and we'll call on you. If you're a visitor or a new person to Discord or the server, then we just ask for you to join the server and ask your question in voice channel chat. But yeah, basically right now we're just kind of, addressing any kind of comments, concerns, if anyone has any feedback or thoughts on just how the game is going right now, kind of where it's going, where it's been. That's basically just kind of what we're talking about for a little bit longer, just until I have to get to... Obviously, just increasing the time limit before you can shield to 2 hours would slow things down a lot. The small 5 to 10 minute wait to shield after activity is too short. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that could be a thing too. That could even be. That could even be like a king skill or something. I mean, if they didn't want to, I guess, generally increase it. I'm not sure though, as far as how I would feel about them increasing it to that long. I mean, maybe if it was a skill or some kind of a buff or debuff, right, that could be something where you put that on a player and you don't allow for them to shield for an hour or 2 hours. That actually could be a really cool negative title idea. I actually really like that. Because you can throw that on a rogue player and they can't shield for 1 or 2 hours. Right? And they basically have to kind of stay in rage. Or even if you just increase it to like 30 minutes or something. I mean, I still think something like that could be equally beneficial as well. But as far as, if you're saying like just generally increase the actual bloody rage time before you can shield for every single player game-wide, I don't know if I would agree there. I mean, I think the time limit that they currently have it set at is actually okay. Yeah. Oh gosh, I think I need to... Looks like Ask is giving me the giving me the BNSA format. I already have enough of these. Nice. Let's see. All right. Yeah, so I think, again, unless there's any other questions or, like I said, comments or, things that people would like to address as far as, things they've noticed in game or, want to talk about, I think we've done a pretty good job so far of at least covering a good amount of content from the 2IK Studio Q&A reviews we did, along with the Facebook review, and then also kind of hinting at some new things, pieces of content-wise, that are going to be coming up in the game as well. Let me see where my time limit is at right now. We're at an hour 35. All right, so not that bad. So anyways, guys, look, with that being said, I think we are in a really good place as far as a kind of stopping point. I do, of course, want to thank anyone, or better yet, everyone, who came out to this week's show, where we kind of did a kind of current wrap-up on state of affairs in the game, on where it's at, where it's been, and then, of course, where it's going. And I appreciate all the engagement as well from people in the voice channel chat. I know we had a couple people there that did raise their hand that were already current members, but I know they just might have been away from the mic to then come on. But I definitely appreciate it. I think having these meetings, even if it's on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, right, can be really good and educationally informative to players that are either new, or maybe even just for players that have played other games but not IK, or maybe just haven't had that much experience in certain areas of the games. I think anytime you can have a healthy discussion on these matters can always be really beneficial to players. So anyways, with that being said, again, I appreciate everyone coming out, and until we come back next week for another show, I know we have my S36, or I should say my Jumper Project Town Hall on our server, Discord server Town Hall, that we're going to be doing, I think, here in about a little over 2 hours. But last kind of shameless plugs, what I would say is definitely make sure you guys go and check out the IK Video Creators channel, so you can go and support, find some creators that you want to watch content on. Also, if you're interested, like we've talked about a lot, in involving yourself with jumper accounts, or even finding a jumper group in case you might be interested in doing that, you can go check that out in the server or jumper recruitment channel, which is just above this one here in the media section. Along with my own personal shameless plug of, if you're interested, you're more than welcome to check out our Jumper project. There's a Discord link in my name, in my custom status, or you can also find ads in the server or Jumper recruitment channel. If you're interested in just kind of taking a look at ours or any others that are promoting themselves as of now. And yeah, that's it for me. So again, I hope everyone enjoyed as usual, and we'll see everyone back again next week, pretty much more or less at the same time, give or take. So I hope everyone has a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're at. But take care.